This is Dr. Wysong. This series of videos on the big questions of life will show where each one of us is led if we dare to leave behind preconceived ideas and see where reason and evidence lead. The question of origins is not just for science, academics, or casual musing. It's the foundation for belief, and belief has to do with how we live our lives and how we justify them. When we don't approach life and the questions it presents as if thinking matters, there are consequences. Let's examine how poor thinking on origins gets us into trouble. Aside from all the science and reason that militates against evolution, there are also some very pragmatic and ethical reasons to reject it. Hundreds of thousands of writings have been produced since Darwin, with the word evolution lacing their pages. One would think that belief in evolution was essential to progress and human well-being. However, although evolution emerged when the Industrial Revolution was gearing up to nosebleed speed, it did not contribute to that advance even in the slightest. Nothing in genetics, anatomy, physiology, medicine, biology, chemistry, physics, astronomy, or electronics was ever discovered, improved upon, or retired to obsolescence because of evolutionary thought. That is downright astonishing, since evolution is treated as if it were a scientific law that would hamstring every scientist everywhere if it had not been conceived and were not believed with devotion. If evolution is not science, if it produces nothing, predicts nothing, contradicts real science, and has no evidence, what is it? It's just another man-made religion comprised of faith and belief. Evolution does, however, affect people's view of existence, and this in turn has social impact. Since evolution is a whopper of a deception, it's contrary to truth, its effects cannot be expected to be good, and they aren't. For example, millions of organs have been removed from people, tonsils, appendix, teeth, and other parts and organs, because doctors believe that some organs are merely useless remnants of evolution, in other words, vestigial. The result, if patients are not damaged from the medical intervention itself, is people who are less fit, less whole, and more vulnerable to disease. The number one killer in our society is modern medicine. I know that seems astonishing, and for documentation and proof of that, see the companion book, Living Life as If Thinking Matters. Anyway, it's the number one killer because doctors are trained into thinking the body is mere evolutionary matter that can be manipulated like any machine. The modern fields of nutrition and food processing assume food is only matter and nutrient analyses. The result is disease-producing, additive-laden, heat-processed foods. These are based upon the assumption that we can evolve to thrive on percentages rather than real natural foods, as they were created. We don't, as evidenced by a world plagued by nutritionally generated chronic diseases. Again, for proof of this, see the companion Living Life as If Thinking Matters book. Agriculture that's based upon materialism and evolution strip mines the land and genetically manipulates crops to grow on paltry nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, or NPK, fertilizer, and a toxic brew of insecticides and herbicides. Many interpret evolution to mean that humans are its pinnacle achievement and that everything lower on the tree belongs to us to do with as we please. A might makes right imperative also logically leaves little room for a sense of responsibility toward the rest of the world. If we have the might, we have the evolutionary right. But to be fair, the religious notion that humans were given, quote, dominion over the earth can yield the same mentality. Class, racial struggles, and discrimination are not only justified, but mandated by evolution. Most oppressive political systems, such as communism, fascism, and Nazism, have philosophical roots in evolution. Herbert Spencer and eugenicists taught a social Darwinism that justified the 19th century exploitation of immigrants by industrialists. Again, yes, religion has had a hand in all of the above, on all of the things that I've been discussing, but we'll discuss that more thoroughly coming up. I don't mean to paint all evolutionists with broad, evil strokes. evolutionists can be good, kind, and even extraordinarily decent people. It's just that the belief they have yoked themselves to would permit any entirely different and base character. To be good, they must swim against the stream of their own ideas. Evolutionary theory engenders ethical futility, or a meaninglessness and purposelessness. For example, tell your kids bedtime stories every night about how they are nothing but an accident of stardust and burps from volcanic muck. Tell them how the brain in their heads is nothing more than atoms, and for atoms to bother contemplating right and wrong is absurd. Explain that no matter what they did that day or do the next, it is inconsequential. Tell them it makes no difference whether they are alive or dead, and that their only mission in life, if they even wish to participate, since it's also unimportant, is to dominate the world and others. Now, if you don't tell them these intellectually and ethically X-rated but evolution-justified stories, no matter, they'll watch it on television and get hammered with it in school anyway. In the meantime, we wonder why the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Yes, we hear about goodness, high moral standards, the importance of right and wrong from evolutionist parents, teachers, judges, policemen, preachers, and politicians, but something's out of tune. There's a disconnect between the ethical void that logically flows from evolutionary philosophy that scientists and academicians are foisting on the public, and the ironic call for the practice of probity and goodness. Those smart enough to see this illogic may feel justified in brushing altruism and ethics aside and do what they must to serve their own selfish, riotous, and evolutionary imperative. Or they may just resign themselves to meaninglessness and live out a fruitless, vapid existence. Only those who can espouse evolution, but deny its meaning, can live a fulfilling, contributing, and more selfless life. Thank goodness there's a lot of those. Our lives and the essential things from nature that sustain us and bring us happiness are not really of our doing. They are gifts that come from elsewhere. Our ethical sense should nag that the elsewhere deserves acknowledgement. To wrongly assume that nature is self-explanatory, cold, and purposeless is to lose the pleasure of appreciation and the warmth of spirit that watching a sunset, a deer and its fawn, or even an amoeba can bring. Life is diminished by the blindness of evolution's hubris. In the face of the impossibility of all circumstances coming together perfectly for the universe to function, for life to exist, and for us to breathe our next breath, humility can be the only reasonable reaction.
Thank you for listening. Keep in mind that solving the big questions requires foundations upon which truthful answers can be built. So please work through the series sequentially. This information has taken decades of research, thought, and writing. Aside from the peace of mind the solutions have brought me, the only reward I seek is hearing that it's helped you. Feel free to contact me with any comments or questions at asifThinkingMatters.com.